So dear students, welcome back to our philosophical anthropology classes today. Yes, we had a very broader introduction to the course, and then we started with saying something about the advanced course that we are going to have about philosophical anthropology. We also tried to see some of the definitions, two-word definitions that we have from Plato onwards. So many definitions are there, but then we took only a few. And then we also said the different phases of the study of anthropology, namely cosmocentric, theocentric, and anthropocentric. And then we started with various dimensions that is developed in the history of Western philosophy regarding man or anthropology. So we have seen the first dimension, and that was man as a worker, developed by Karl Marx. And then that was one point of the second division. And then the second point under the division number 2 was, yes, the existential man. Clear? Existential man. There we saw Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard is called the father of modern existentialism. And his definition of man. And then to exist means to stand out. And then man is said to be, according to him, in the crowd, and we need to stand out. The crowd dictated things, and man lost his face, and all that we have seen. And then the 3 stages of man's ethical life that we have seen: aesthetic, ethical, and religious. And then man takes an option for himself, and all that is. Well, we are now to continue that the philosophy developed by in Kierkegaard is further extended by 2 more philosophers. That will be the subject matter of our study today. The existential interpretation of man and his existence can take 2 divergent attitudes. 2 different attitudes. Well, in these 2 different attitudes, we also get 2 definitions about man. That is why we are going to see them. So, in other words, the existentialist interpretation of man has taken 2 divergent or 2 different attitudes. One is that of Nietzsche, Nietzsche. Nietzsche. S-C-H-E. Nietzsche. And the second one is that of Sartre. Some say Sartre. No, he's called Sartre. S-A-R-T-R-E. Sartre. Now, both are existentialist philosophers. Now you'll see in your 3rd year, in the history of Western contemporary philosophy, Soren Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and Sartre. So therefore, I won't be saying much. The professor will have enough and more to tell you. But we are only just culling out or taking out what is their official position about anthropology or man. So that's only what we will be dealing. And then when you get your history of Western philosophy, contemporary, Nietzsche, Sartre and all, you can write more. No problem. But then I'm interested only in getting what is their philosophical notion of man, anthropology. Clear, no? So with that we enter in. Therefore, the existential interpretation of man and his existence can take 2 divergent attitudes in the given now situation. One attitude would be to affirm the empirical realities. So in other words, to affirm Affirm the empirical reality, and which is the highest of all empirical reality, man. That's all. Clear? So in other words, from the beginning onwards, we are trying to say, yes, man as a crown of creation. So in other words, when we affirm empirical realities, well, the highest is man, in the empirical realm. So Nietzsche is one such philosopher who has taken such a direction. Nietzsche. We will deal it also with the Sartre. That will be the content of today's course. Okay, Nietzsche. Now, Nietzsche's emphasis of the individual will. Nietzsche's emphasis on the individual will was a reaction to collectivistic, abstract intellectualism of Hegel. That's the thing that we have already seen in the first part. Clear? There was a severe attack on the Hegelian notion of man, because man was as understood. Reality is in a process, contradiction is the root of life, reality is idea, reason or spirit. And then man is said to be in the movement of this triadic understanding of God, man and nature. So therefore, he simply attacked Hegel's what? Collectivistic, abstract, intellectualistic notion of man. So it was a reaction. And then, very interesting, he described that the believing man, for example, the Christian of his times, were in the decadent stage. In other words, the believing man of his time, he is talking, he is a Westerner, and then the Christianity was the religion, or was the religion there. Therefore, he looked at the neighbors, others, and particularly they were all Christian countries. So the believing man, for example, the Christians of his times were in the decadent stage. You will study more about what is decadence and all. Day before yesterday evening I was reading exactly Nietzsche's that decadence, one article, beautiful. And then the recurrent, the age, it goes on repeating, and then that Johnson will deal it with. I don't have to go into that. So they were led by the Christian dogma of an afterlife and accepted everything without really making a personal self-assertion. So he is insisting on the individual will. But then the men of his time, as Søren Kierkegaard described, well, were dogmatists. They were simply, without evaluating, believing and going around with Christian dogmas. I will read that sentence once again. He described that the believing man, for example, the Christians of his times, were in the decadent stage. They were led by the Christian dogmas of an afterlife and accepted everything without really making a personal self-assertion. Clear? In other words, without personalizing what they believed, they went on with the dogma. That is the point. So the belief that God exists was for Nietzsche a slavish attitude which fails to affirm and assert the individual will. So in other words, you go on believing in a set of dogmas, but you forget that you have a will to accomplish certain things. That was forgotten. So, well, a kind of, therefore, belief was for him a kind of slavery. You follow certain principles, you follow certain ideals about life and go around, but then you don't reflect about the will that you have to accomplish something. We'll come slowly into that a little more in details. So, the individual will was not given importance by the men of his time. Hence, his call is to make the individual will affirm itself. Affirm your will. Affirm your will means what? Your personal will. And thus take to the direction of the will to power. Will to power. So therefore, his definition of man is what? Will to power. Will to power. So in other words, you find yourself in the crowd, stand out. Well, if you are following Kierkegaard, Nietzsche is in the same line. Therefore, yes, you are in the crowd, knowing that you have an individual will, affirm it, move forward. Don't look at the crowd, don't look at others, but you need to realize yourself as self-realization, which will take place only by affirming your will. Therefore, his definition of man is will to power. Again, it's a two-word definition, as we have seen. Clear? Okay. From this, it clearly follows that Nietzsche, in taking a critical distance of the traditional approaches, went to the extreme of asserting the individual. Yes, the individual is given importance. The individual freedom is given more importance. Individual will to realize his capacity is given importance. So, we are still with the existentialist philosophers. Idea clear? Okay. And now, what is the problem with this understanding of man? You look at, you realize that you are in the crowd, exactly as Cherian Kierkegaard said, to exist means to stand out. And now to stand out means, what does it mean for Nietzsche? It is realizing your own will. Realizing your own will. Will to power. And that there arises the notion of Superman that Johnson will teach you. That is part of the history of Western philosophy. It's not my business. Clear? It is not history of Western philosophy I am teaching. I am talking about philosophy of man advanced course, ethics advanced course, and theodicy. Clear? So, will to power. That is. Now, what do you think is if you evaluate, well, he is insisting upon something very interesting, that you have power within you, you are an existential being, and you have power to accomplish yourself. All right. It's a good notion, will to power and Superman, and that is how he says the arrival of the Superman and all. You will learn from him, or he will explain to you. But then, we are just winding up here. Nietzsche, what is the trouble with this thinking? Nietzsche doesn't say anything about others. You are asked to move forward in the direction. You accomplish yourself. Man is not an island. He is found. Yes, you will later realize man is said to be in the world. Man is mit-sein, with others. Clear? Man is with others. Therefore, he doesn't say anything about the role of the other. One thing, in making me what I am. Nor he doesn't say anything about the role of me in the making of the other. Do you get me what I am talking about? Yeah, in other words, well, we are all helping each other to realize our worth. But then he doesn't say anything about it. Will to power is his. Therefore, as a kind of concluding part of Nietzsche, well, we say his appeal, or he failed to discover that the individual can go beyond himself to the other and thus create communities. He speaks here only about the individual. He doesn't speak anything, say anything about others. Others means what? Community. That is one of the defects of his philosophical thinking. So that is about Nietzsche. So we said in the beginning, yes, the existential approach propounded or proposed by Soren Kierkegaard has taken two divergent attitudes or two different attitudes. One is that of proposed by Nietzsche, and that is what we have already seen, that the will to, the individual will and will to power. Now, that is Nietzsche's. And now we go into Sartre. Sartre is also an existentialist philosopher, and so he gives importance to existence. Yes, existence means again to stand out. Existence means to stand out. To stand out means, yes, you determine yourself, no problem. That is all in line with the Western existentialist form of thinking. And now, will to power. Again here, he takes up the notion of freedom. Now, this is something very interesting. He is also not worried so much about the community or about the other. But then he says, man is condemned to be free. What is the freedom? Yes, you are condemned to freedom. In other words, you have no other alternative other than to be a free being. You have no other alternative other than being a free being. And this freedom is a condemned freedom. What do you mean by freedom? Condemned means what? Yeah, you have no other alternative other than to be free. Therefore, he says, to be free means freedom is a useless passion. Therefore, his definition of man, what? Man as a useless passion. You have freedom, but this freedom is a useless freedom. It's a condemned freedom. It's a condemned freedom. It's a useless freedom. So, his definition of man as useless passion. Here too, he doesn't have anything to say about the other, the community dimension of life. We know we are all part and parcel of a community. A community, what does it mean? Yes, from the very beginning, let us take our own birth. Yeah, this is union of two people that we are born. In other words, there is already a community presupposed even for our birth. There is no doubt regarding that. So here, man is condemned to be free. That freedom is a useless passion. Is a useless passion. Oh, you people.